Peace, peace. Barghani, Islam, Salam, Etepu, Rahubat, Gino Lakoninani, Chief Noble Bandele Elamin, back again for another show. I'm trying to do this show, and I was testing it out, and I kind of got it messed up. So I hope y'all join in anyway, and we can get into this mathematics tonight. Tonight we're gonna be dealing with Kamala Harris, the VP. We're gonna be discussing like what's going on with her. Everybody knows the news about her being the nominee for the president. So we're gonna take a critical look at what she's doing, what she's about. We're gonna look at uh, her candidacy and how it relates to the liberal media and the liberal agenda, right? So before we get into that, do an ad.
Knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenous.org, your one-stop shop for indigenous needs.
Yeah, I gotta get this together, y'all. Y'all bear with me. We gonna get it.
Yes, knowledge is for the people. Get your books today on indigenous.org, your one-stop shop for indigenous needs.
All right, y'all. So please check out me, King El Bay's books, my boy Amin Ma'at Ra. All our books can be found on indigenousmoors.org. So with that being said, I know we on this late night journey, right? So y'all come with me on this late night journey. I wanted to do this earlier, but I'm gonna get it in anyway. And what I want to discuss is we're going to discuss the liberal agenda dealing with Kamala Harris becoming the candidate for the Democratic Party. So, as y'all know, this past week, the Democratic Party has had a hell of a time, dealing with President Biden dropping out of the race and endorsing Kamala Harris for the president. Now, I've already looked and seen like it's so many videos dealing with Kamala Harris. We got to deal with her because, and before I get into this, I want you to understand that this has not got anything to do with a sister or anything of that nature. Like, we got to look at the liberal agenda. We have to look at the Democratic Party and the liberal agenda to really understand what's going on. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're just going to be critical of Kamala, right? And we're going to, we're going to break some stuff down because there's a lot of things there's a lot of things that need to be discussed about Kamala Harris. Okay. Like I said, this is not a slight against a woman, because the thing about it is people want to say I'm going against her because she's a so-called black woman. Well, I want to discuss all that. I want to discuss the fact, her racial, her racial stock, if you will, what she's really considered. We want to look at some of her past. We got to look at these things just like any other person, and this is not the first time that Kamala has been in the spotlight and has had to be criticized because she was running for president back in 2020. So a lot of this is stemming. A lot of this information is going to take you back a little bit, but we got to look at some things because the liberal agenda is being played out, and they gotta figure out a way to play out the liberal agenda. And whoever is in whoever is running for office, they're going to see if they are willing to push the liberal agenda. So, what is the liberal agenda, right? We know what the liberal agenda is. The liberal agenda is not just about, democracy, which is not really democracy is not what this country really is, but they're pushing an agenda that we've talked about on this show before. So what we want to do, I want to kind of look at the agenda that she's pushing. And there's some things that we got to look at because in reality, has Kamala always been the plan? Is she the plan for the liberal agenda? And was Biden really just a decoy? I what I see and what I look at is that Biden was the name that people knew, but he was too old. Not that he was just too old, but Biden was not mentally in his right state of mind when he got in office. And you liberals, Democrats, y'all don't want to admit that Biden already when he came he was already damaged goods. But they put Kamala in as vice president, and with that, people are already saying that she was going to take over. Like many people didn't believe that Biden was going to even make it through his presidency, which I mean, it kind of looks like that even right now because I mean, he's still got a few more months, and people are not just calling for him to drop out, which he did, but people are really kind of like, does he have the mental capacity to finish this out? So was Kamala the plot and the plan of the liberals to push their agenda? Was she really the plan at some point, right? So I mean, like what? So what I want to do is I want to look at. Let me see. I want to look at some of this, right? And I want to get into this. So let me see. I'm uh, I'm trying to get this together, y'all. So y'all gotta bear with me. Okay, so let me see. This is it. So what I'm gonna look at is I want to look at a couple of clips that was going on with Kamala, right?
Mr. Ford, what advice would you give a young lady wanting to become president of the United States?
All right, so this okay, so let me set this up. This is dealing with President Ford. Like I said, back in '89. So this was a question asked to President Ford about women becoming president. All right, so I'm gonna play it again so y'all can hear it. Hopefully, y'all can hear everything.
Mr. Ford, what advice would you give a young lady wanting to become president of the United States?
Well, I hope we do have a young lady at some point become president of the United States. Uh, I can tell you how I think it will
All
happen
right, let me add it to the screen.
because it won't happen in the.
All right, y'all.
Mr. Ford, what advice would you give a young lady wanting to become president of the United States?
Well, I hope we do have a young lady at some point become president of the United States. Uh, I can tell you how I think it will happen because it won't happen in the normal course of events. Either the Republican or Democrat political party will nominate a man for president and a woman for vice president. and the woman and man will win. So you'll end up with a president, a male, and a vice president, a female. And in that term of office of the president will die, and the woman will become president under the law, the Constitution.
All right. All right. So did y'all hear that? Let me get this off the screen. So what was being said was that President Ford was saying that he thinks that the way a woman would become president would basically be by default. So that is interesting to note that he said that back in the late 80s. So was this something that was common? Like, because Ford is speaking of, off his top of his head per se, but was this the sentiment of, not just the Republican Party, but just the sentiment of politics? Now, Hillary tried to run for president, and that's what she was defeated. And you would think that a so-called liberal, what we call so-called white woman, was not able to win. Now, what the Democratic Party has done is they're always trying to appeal to the melanated people, the minorities, so-called blacks, these type of people. They're always trying to get them to vote. We talked about this before. Malcolm discussing the white liberal. So when we look at Kamala in comparison to even like Barack Obama, because they was like, we're going to get a so-called black person with Barack, which he was half and half, right? But he gave the appearance of being one of us, right? Well, they took the same playbook and they ran it with Kamala. Now you got a woman that looks like us, that has credentials that could make her be one of us. So, for example, she graduated from Howard, which is a HBCU. So it gives the perception that she knows that she's black, right? So we gotta look at this, because the thing about it is the Democratic Party never seems to get a pure, like a American bred person that's melanated. Never gets that. The people who have been able to get into these positions are not necessarily what you guys would call an African American, or what some people call ADOS, or just a born bred so-called black. These people are not it, but they use them as a guise to get your vote, to keep you loyal to that party. Now, like we said, we just saw that um, the Democratic Party, or no, we just saw that if a woman is going to become president, that she was going to become default. She was going to either get in there because there was already a male in there, and for whatever reason they had to get out, and a woman would come in by default. So hold on. So let's look. So check these. Let me get this together. Um, let me get this together. What we gonna do now is look at the next this next video where we talk about. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is it. So let's look at this video. I want you guys to look at this clip about Biden and what Biden said. Now you say it says president elect. So this was like back when Biden originally got into office, right? So let's look at this video.
But and I told Barack, if I reach something where there's a fundamental disagreement we have based on a moral principle, I'll develop some disease and say I have to resign. We don't have that. We haven't, and we discussed it. But I told Barack, if I reach something where there's a fundamental disagreement we have based on a moral principle, I'll develop some disease and say I have to resign. We don't have that. We haven't, and we discussed it. But
you hear that? So let me get out of this screen. So what he's saying is that he would. So what was being said is he said it. Hey, if me and Barack don't agree, and he got the stutter stepping, that he would come up with an illness and resign. Now, let's be truthful, y'all. When Biden went into office, he already had something wrong with him. He already had his alibi of some type of disease, right? So he was letting you guys know back then that he felt at some point, sooner or later, before he was out, that Kamala was going to be the president or have a shot at being president. Now I'm gonna tell you something. The plan is for her to get in there. And this is what their plan seems to have been, based on the 2 video clips that we've watched. That they were going to plan to put a woman when it's time, and that they were going to once she got in as VP, that she was going to slide on in and be the president. That's the plan. Now, what I think is going to cause a clog of that is going to be Trump. Like Trump is a very formidable. People don't like him. I get it. I know that the so-called melanated, so-called black people do not like Trump for the most part, but he's a very formidable opponent. And like we've talked about in the other videos, Trump has grown amongst the so-called black population. He has grown to become a person that they are considering to vote for. And one of the problems with Kamala is that she is really doesn't seem to be very electable right now. She doesn't seem to be very electable, right? She's not liked among so-called black men. There are now women, so-called black women, are seeming to take her and back her, but there's still a split, or there's still like indecisiveness. There's not a unified push right now with Kamala. Okay, there's not, and that's a big problem. The fact that Barack Obama at this point has not fully invested into this woman is showing a major issue with what's going on within the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has become splintered in a way and is not unified at this particular time. So that really is giving Trump a major advantage that people are not taking into consideration. And so-called black people are so wrapped into the liberal, they're so tied in, like they're so liberal that they're not really seeing the fullness of this. So one of the things that we've talked about with the Democratic Party, because, and the reason why I say this is because the Democratic Party is getting away with murder in a sense, right? Because they are allowed to uh, they're talking about Agenda 2025 and their Project 2025, but they're not discussing 2030. Now, people have, I've had comments where people say, "Hey, 2030 is a UN agenda," but the Liberal Party is taking they're the ones that have aligned themselves with the 2030 agenda. Okay, so we talked about the 2030 agenda. The 2030 agenda is the green, like the green energy, electric cars, these type of things. You guys got to go back and check out my other videos about 2030, right? Because I break those down with the 17. They've got like 17 parts to the 2030 agenda that the UN is dealing with, right? So she aligns. Kamala Harris aligns perfectly with the 2030 agenda. And you're going to say, well, why do I say that? So let's look at what she said. Okay, real quick. We're going to look at, let's just read this, right? So people really need to read the UN. People really need to read the United Nations Agenda 2030. Okay? Then they need to understand that 160 nations signed on, including the United States of America Corporation. You hear that? They said the United States of America Corporation. That's a whole nother show. But for y'all that are in the know, y'all understand what that means. But it says to get the human population down to 800 million people by the year 2030. Now you have Kamala right here talking about depopulation. People need to wake up. That is part of the New World Order agenda. So, what is the New World Order agenda? We've talked about UN. It's called the Agenda 21, but that was the original name or the name prior to this. But now it's called Agenda 2030. So they admit their goals according to this. Now, this is not from their website, right? But this is the agenda that we've talked about on previous shows. It says a one world government, one world cashless currency, one world central bank, one world military, the end of national sovereignty, the end of all privately owned property, the end of the family unit, depopulation control, population control, density, mandatory multiple vaccines, universal basic income, microchip society for purchasing, travel, tracking, and control. Do these things sound familiar? Right? Like I said, we've talked, like before I get into the rest, we've talked about these things before. This is what the 2030 agenda that is being propagated by the liberal Democratic Party. They are allowing themselves to be aligned and be used by the UN. So the key to this is for us to really understand and check into what is going on with the Democratic Party, because we're so focused on the right hand that we're really not looking at the left hand. And this is what I've been saying. So let's look at this video. It's a real quick video, but this gives you where she's coming from. Hold on, let me play it again. Let me take it off of mute. Right. All right. So listen to come on.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Okay. So y'all, did you hear what she said? Check. I just want you to understand what she said, right? So she sounds like Bill Gates. All these people are talking about we got to depopulate. Now, why we got to depopulate when there's enough food to go around the world? If people produce food and share, there's enough food to go around. There's enough to go around the world. There's enough resources for the world. But the Democratic of all people are saying reduce the population. Why? Why is it that you need to reduce the population? Why? And the thing about it, the crazy thing about this is that this is not like new. This is not new to the Democratic Party. Now, I don't have anything up for this, but I want to get into this. When we look at Jimmy Carter, y'all go look at Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, he had a cabinet member, if I remember, Zabrinsky. They had what they call the Global 2000 report. Okay, this is back in 78, 79. And so Jimmy Carter, good old Jimmy Carter, everybody loves Jimmy Carter. That administration was talking and had did a report, and they had came back. The report that came back and said that they have to depopulate the planet, and particularly they had to depopulate the planet of melanated people, what they call non-white people. That's what they call. They had to do 1 billion non-white people by the year 2000 in order to uh, maintain the resources that they had. So it's quite interesting that it's the Democratic Party that has always seemed to be part of this plan. And the Republican Party, being conservative, have always tried to push conservative wise. Now, I'm not saying Republicans in total, but I'm saying the conservatives have always tried to push the religious consolidation on the people. So, once again, like I've said before, we've got a fight between these two of ideologies that could actually cause a lot of conflict and harm. We are in a dangerous time, and I'm not trying to cause a lot of chaos and panic, but what I need for us to do is really take this serious and not just look at it from a point of hate or dislike. Okay, like people don't like Trump, and I'm not telling you that you have to vote for Trump, but what I'm saying is that we must wake up. We've got to do better with who we're going to have in office. That we can't just go with Kamala Harris because she's melanated. I hear and I've seen a lot of people say I'm with her. I'm with her because of their dislike of Trump. And whether you like him or not, he might at this point be, I hate to say it, but he might be the best point to stop in New World Order. Because this is the straight up agenda. Now, I'm not saying that Project 2025 or that the conservative Republican Party doesn't have anything up their sleeve. I'm not saying that they are not, motivated to create their own new world order, which is what you might see in that. But if you guys are really talking about the lesser of two evils, I'm not sure that you guys really have the right perspective on what's the lesser of two evils. I really don't. I think that Kamala is something that was set up to put into place because she probably, like, she is a much better controlling party than the other party is. That Kamala is going to further the agenda of New World Order, where the Republican through Trump is going to go about it a different way. So, where Kamala will allow the liberal viewpoints of, allowing, like, what we see is the LBGT community being, like, taken over. I mean, the rainbow people might take over through this way because we're so stuck against the conservatives. But really, the conservatives are, they're about keeping things the same. Most of us are not necessarily part of that, what we call the rainbow community. We're not necessarily part of the rainbow community. They make up a very small population, but yet the liberal Democrats want to use them and perpetuate that. So I'm just telling y'all that it is very imperative that we critically look at what's going on with Kamala. We look at her background. We look at the fact that she is not from America. Her parents are not Americans. Um, and that although looking at her background, her father and her mother are very astute people. Now, I'm not disagreeing with that. They were very astute, very intelligent people that have accomplished, things in life. Their family is seem like a, a well up family. They're well to do, but when we're talking about the United States or America or whatever you call it, and we're talking about what is going on, I I we cannot just follow a person just because she's melanated. I, from my perspective, Kamala does not really necessarily associate herself totally with being melanated. So people are saying, well, she is mixed, like she's got Indian, like South Asian, they call it Indian with her mother. Her father was a so-called black Jamaican, if you will. And so she does not have the same um, understanding of what so-called black America is. If you look at people from India, their perception of so-called black people in America is different. If you look at Jamaicans, people from the islands, they tend to look at themselves different than the typical what we call black Americans. They have a different background and things of that nature. There's a lot of, like, for example, there's a lot of very dark skinned, and if you didn't see them open their mouths and speak Spanish, they would look like a black American, but they don't associate with black American. They don't call themselves black. They look at themselves as whatever nationality they are. So they don't associate with the black American. Okay. So when I'm looking at Kamala, there's another video I got to show you guys. Hold on. It's another video where, let me see if I can pull it up. I got it on my other page. But what she's talking about, let me see if I can pull it up. Let's find it. Let's find it, y'all. Let's find this video. Okay, so I'm gonna get it. Y'all bear with me just 1 second. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Let's keep it going. All right. Let's keep it going. We're gonna look at this video. Before I get into this video, hold on, let me make sure I get it shared. Before I get into it, let me see. All right, so y'all may have seen this before. Y'all might have heard this video before. Right? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show this video. Hopefully you guys can hear it. Let me make sure that all right. Hold on. Let me get it. Let me get it right. Okay. Oh my goodness, I can't get this up right. Let's see if this is it.
The former president is a threat.
This is not it. Oh, hold on, y'all. Let me get it together. I'm trying to get this video to pull up. I don't know why it won't pull up. Okay, this video is really old, right? This video is old, but this video is very relevant to what we're discussing because it's going to show where Kamala stands with us, right? It's going to show where she stands with us. And let me make sure I pull it up right. I'm trying to get it together now. Let me make sure I get it together. Like I said, please like this video, share it. Okay, so it's up. I'm going to pull this up and I'm going back to that. Okay, so let us get into this. Let's see, it's 5 minutes. Okay, so let's go to this. If y'all haven't heard this.
If you were elected president, what would be your agenda for the black community?
Right.
We know that black Americans are arrested at higher rates for marijuana.
Right.
We're denied mortgages when we.
Not to mention that she was a major factor in locking up a lot of us in California, right? So let's keep it going.
That's exactly right.
There's wealth disparity. So how do you help the black community?
That's right. Well, the first step is to understand that
The needs of Black folks are the needs of everyone, and the needs of everyone are the needs of Black folks. It is also equally important to understand that this is a country that had over 200 years of slavery, that Jim Crow had legalized segregation and discrimination, and now de facto segregation and discrimination. And so while our needs are like everyone else's in terms of we want our babies to be born healthy and live a happy and productive life, we care about issues of climate change, we care about issues of national security, we also know that when you look at disparities around wealth, around home ownership, around education, around who is stopped, arrested, and incarcerated in this country, there are huge disparities based on race, and that has to be dealt with. So part of my proposal in terms of the agenda, specifically for Black folks, is about what we need to do, for example, around maternal mortality. I have actually sponsored a bill and intend, as President of the United States, to make sure it is passed, around recognizing that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. And when you study the issue, you know that it is not about the education level of somebody, it is not about their socioeconomic level, it is literally about their race. Remember what happened to Serena. It is literally about racial bias in the medical health professions that cause people to not take Black women seriously when they walk into the door of that hospital or that emergency room in terms of how they talk about what they need. The agenda includes HBCUs, for example. I am a proud graduate of Howard University. I know that our HBCUs have raised and helped raise generations of leaders in this country, and do it in a very special way that is about nurturing and about creating high standards and challenging young people to be their best, not giving them any excuse, but giving them all kinds of support. So we need to do more. Yeah, I'm right now working on, and actually got it out of the Senate, and the House passed it around giving more money to HBCUs around their historic landmarks. But there's more to be done around creating incentives for more young people to go into the STEM professions through HBCUs. There is what we need to do around the point that you're raising about the economic disparities. I have a proposal that will be my first order of business when elected president, that is about lifting up middle class working families. And what I'm proposing specifically is that families that are making $100,000 or less would get a tax credit that they would receive it up to $500 a month. This proposal, economists across the board have said, would be the most significant middle class tax cut for American families and generations, and it would lift up 60% of Black families out of poverty.
So it does touch Black families.
Oh, absolutely, directly. Because when you look at the proportionality of where Black families are, you see it in terms of housing.
Here we go.
Home ownership.
Here we go, y'all.
Where white families is something, I'm going to get this generally right, but something around 70% of white families own their homes versus somewhere around 40% for Black families. So you don't have to look very hard to see that disparities exist. But you also don't have to look very hard to see this. That when we're talking about families, regardless of their color, they have an equal desire to work hard, to love their children, and allow them to have a pathway and an equal pathway to success. Black mothers, white mothers of whatever race, wake up in the middle of the night worrying about their children and their health and their well-being. And we need to address that. But I will say there's another issue that we need to address that's specific to Black families. And that is this. We cannot have a society where a father or a mother, by the time their son turns about 12 years old, has to sit down and have a talk about how he will be stopped or chased or arrested or even killed because of the color of his skin.
And so how do you intend to change that from the White House? How would you change policy around that?
Part of it is that the president makes a decision about who's going to run the United States Department of Justice. Currently, under this administration, they have shut down the pattern and practice investigations that involve investigating police departments that have a pattern and practice of discrimination. Those need to be reopened and revived with vigor, because no American should want that a police department that has a history and a pattern and practice of discrimination should be able to get away with that without consequence and accountability. Another issue is what happens through the Department of Justice around consent decrees, which are basically a requirement that police departments that have a history of that kind of behavior, they're under a court order for supervision.
All right.
This Department of Justice has essentially shut those down.
I got to find the second part to this.
Do you support reparations
Here we
for
go.
Black people?
Here we go.
Well, listen.
This is the part right here.
We had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the Lift Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans.
All right, I like that. I like the interviewer because she nailed her. So she, the VP, she's saying, how I'm gonna help, so-called Black Americans. I'm going to create this bill and this project that will help. It's going to help everybody, but because it helps everybody, it'll help Black people. So that's what she was saying about reparations. She was particularly asked about reparations, which is something that was supposed to be given to so-called Black Americans, but she made it about the country. Now, I get it. She's running for office, so she can't just talk all about black. But when it comes to talking to Blacks about the issues, to get them to vote for her, okay, reparations is a big deal to a lot of Blacks. So let's check out what she said.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
Let's go back.
Because what benefit Black people? No. Because I'm going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No. Because whatever benefits that Black family.
Go back.
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No. Because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
So let's look at what she's saying. Now you could take it a one way. You could say, well, she's not going to come out and say that it's for Black people, but it's really not for Black people. It's a general thing that would benefit Blacks. What I think that Kamala is trying to say is that it would benefit Blacks more so than anybody else. But she can't come out and just say, oh, it's for Blacks and reparations, right? That's what I think she's trying to say. But at the same time, she's saying that it's not going to be in her policy to help blacks in itself, even though things for blacks are worse. You know what I'm saying? Like you got. It's interesting that when other ethnic groups, so for example, the Asian community, particularly Koreans or whatever, that were being dealt with, how they were given a particular act. They were given an executive order to try to protect them, and it was specifically for the Asians. But when it comes to melanated people in this country who have been through a disfranchising, who have been through so much, even these melanated people who come off like they're doing something can never say that they're helping black people. If you remember, even Barack Obama couldn't come out and say he was helping black people. When he came out and said something about that could have been my child, they went up in an uproar. And he really never spoke like that again. So he knew that, oh, okay, I'm not allowed to, specify for melanated people, right? Let's look at these comments. Let's get into this, man. Let's get into these comments. For me, I'm using the term black to talk to the people as far as letting them understand like what's being called. Now, if we want to discuss Moors, I mean, we are Moorish people, right? I'm not going to that's facts. I'm glad that you spoke about that, but disenfranchised Moors, right? That is true. Moors have been disenfranchised and have been tricked out of everything. They've been tricked out of their knowledge. They've been tricked out of their lineage, their birthright, everything. So Moors have been. But when we're talking, like for me, just talking to one person to another, they don't really, they're not really understanding the concept of Moor. So me just having this conversation, I was just using the term so-called black. That's why I say so-called black, to specify that it's really not what they're really called. But you are right. Most definitely. Most definitely. It says all people who subscribe to color identify are enemies of humanity. Only nations with national descent have names. Now that is true. Now I would argue a little bit with that. I'm not gonna get into it, but I would argue with the fact that being called a Moor is your national descent. I consider myself a Moor. I am a Moor. We have the Moorish temple of New Kemet. So we are Moors, and we do think that being a Moor politically, and that is the next thing that we need to look at, because we're always looking at these political parties. But what do Moors have politically that will allow them to have some type of leverage, control in the political process? There is none. You know, the Moors don't have a political party that is sufficient enough to do anything. Black people don't have any knowledge, and they go with whatever the wind blowing. Particularly, the wind has been blowing liberal, democratic for them for the past 50, 60, 80 years, right? So right now, we don't really have anything, and that's the key. It's like what I feel like the Democratic or liberals are doing is they're throwing us these fictitious people to try to keep us, stuck in the liberal land. They want us to stay liberal. They want us to keep voting the same way, keep doing the same stuff, and hopefully we get different results. And if y'all just keep pushing and you keep hope alive, eventually you so-called black people will have something. And the truth of the matter is, it hasn't happened. It's like, when is enough enough? When is enough enough for us to make a change? Right? Oh yes, peace and love, Red Star. Appreciate that. The science. You understand the science. Um, so we gotta, this for me, this Kamala Harris, for her to be running and for what she's doing, this is really a wake up call. This is not a time for us to fall back to sleep. This is not a time for us to continue to be sheeple. I watched this video earlier. I wish I could pull it up, but the sister, like, we're waking up. The sister was going hard on Kamala and going hard on the Democratic Party. That's what we're talking about. We're saying, like, look, we're tired. We're waking up. If you guys want us to be, if you want us to contribute to your party, y'all gonna have to do a lot more than what you've been doing. You gotta stop throwing us these so-called people that look like us. And that's what it is. It's like they throw you people that look like you so that you can vote. But these people, like Kamala being married to an Albion, so-called white man, right? Barack Obama being raised by a white woman. These people that they're putting in place are just people that are comfortable with, who they feel okay with. They feel like they're not going to go in there and ruffle the feathers. They're not going to, have a assault against so-called white people. That's what they're looking for, because in the back of their minds, they know that if the people that were enslaved get in control, they have a fear that they're going to take it out on them. That it seems to be the biggest fear with these Albions, these so-called white people, is that they think that they're going to lose control of everything and that we're going to reverse it on them. But to me, that's a sign of guilt, right? But what the Democratic Party has done to melanated people for the past 60 years should not be acceptable. And our parents, our parents, we're not our parents. Our children are not our parents. Our parents grew up in a different paradigm, and I think that they had a mentality that was still stuck in a slave mentality. But the veil has been lifted. I'm telling you, y'all. I'm looking at Trump, and I'm seeing how many black people, so-called black people, right? And I'll say that, so-called black people, aka Moorish, people who are waking up and being conscious. I see them waking up. I see these people not having an allegiance to the Democratic Party. I see social media. I see a lot of people not at least they're not like physically, on the open. They're not, on the out, looking at them from where they are. I see a lot of people are saying that they're not down with the Democratic Party. That's basically what I'm saying. I see a lot of people waking up to that. And I hope that this is a beginning, because even though they run to the Republican Party, we got two parties in America who have been about slavery. Now, I understand the Republican Party was not about slavery per se, but the Republican Party tolerated slavery. Abraham Lincoln only freed the slaves because it was going to be an advantage to him. He was trying to win a war. So, you know, a lot of the military, a lot of the white military was being killed and they were losing in a sense. So one of the best things for them to do is to recruit so-called black people and allow them to fight for their freedom in order to win the war. So it really, like, when we look at it, either side was not totally for, melanated people. They had a certain understand or look. They had a certain perspective on what they looked at as a black person. Uh, Abraham Lincoln said that he hate having to free the slave, but that they would not have certain freedoms. He did not see them on a jury duty. He didn't see blacks being full-fledged citizens of the United States because that's what they believed. So I get it. The plot is thick. Right now, this is a really crucial time in America for us to make the right choice and not to fall in the trap. And despite what Kamala is talking about, she's not gonna do anything for the melanated people. I she said she's not gonna do it. She says she's gonna really, if it basically, she's gonna try to fix America, and if melanated people benefit, then so that's good. But that's not anything different than Trump, in my opinion. Trump wants to fix uh, he wants to fix things to benefit America. And if it benefits blacks, then it benefits blacks. But his agenda is different. His agenda, Trump being the kind of guy he is, he's not necessarily for whatever the status quo is throwing at us. You can tell by his first presidency, he wasn't doing what the status quo wanted him to do. That's why he got kicked out in the first place. So now he's running again, but he's so different and he's a little smarter. But y'all got to look at, like, for Trump to be kicked out of, like, lose the election, come back while he's got several cases against him. He was, there was no question in a Republican Party. He Trump didn't go to any debates, and he still won the nominee without any problem. Trump went from being the bad guy in his own party to actually unifying the Republican Party. Trump is a tough cookie. He's a formidable opponent. I just call it like I see it. I'm not here to say, I'm not here like, oh, I'm a pro-Trump guy. I call it like I'm seeing it, y'all. We gotta call these things. We gotta stop. We gotta get out our feelings. We gotta get out our feelings about presidents because melanated people are fickle as hell. I've said this before, that black people will vote for black. They'll vote for you if you act black. Like Democrats use weird tactics. Like, oh, he's black because he got hot sauce in her purse. She got hot sauce in her purse. That make her black. Oh, we should vote for her because she act like she black. Like they, like y'all voted for Bill Clinton twice because the brother, the guy, the president was played saxophone on Arsenio Hall show. Y'all called Bill Clinton the first black president. Y'all see how fickle you guys are? How you guys vote based on emotional crayon savageness. Like, the man played the saxophone. He got to be a black man because, I mean, you know, that's soulful. That's like Kenny G or some shit, right? And then he went on Arsenio Hall, so he got to be down. He's down. Then, you know, he had oral SCX, you know, in office, and y'all was like, oh, that's my knee. That's my knee. Because he had, like, the things that you guys look at to qualify you as the leader of this country is asinine. How many people I talked to that voted for Barack and they said, I don't care, he's black. And I get it. He's going to be the first known black president because he's not the first melanated president. Barack was not the first melanated president, right? Y'all know this. But y'all voted for him anyway. And then y'all voted for him again. And what did he do for you? Really? What did he do? But back then, you couldn't tell so-called black people anything about Barack. You could not be critical of Barack Obama at that point because he was on the wall next to Martin Luther King. You see, that's the problem. The Democrats always prey on your emotions in order to get in office. That's what they've been doing for the past 30 years. And, you know, growing up, my parents would always say negative things about the Republicans, like they were the racists. But when I look back at the history, the most violent acts that have been done against the melanated man was done by Democrats. The Democratic Party is the Klan. Now, I'm going to go on a little tangent real quick because we're going to talk about Abraham Lincoln. Despite what we said about him, Abraham Lincoln wound up freeing the slaves, passing the 13th Amendment. But his vice president, right? His vice president Johnson, I ain't talking about Lyndon B. Johnson, right? But his president Johnson at that time was a Democrat. So when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, all of the things that he had said or promised to the melanated people, the black, so-called black people who were free, those things went away. The whole Reconstruction was done away with because of the democratic policies of Johnson. So when I look at the Democratic Party decided to switch it up a little bit. But what about Dixiecrats? Nobody talks about the Dixiecrats. Like even back in the 50s, right? The South was Democratic. Think about that. Think about that, y'all. The Southerners were Democratic. So my question is, how can you be so aligned? How can you be so aligned with a party that has got this history in it? How can you be so aligned? Now, I can understand if you voted for a Democrat because that Democrat seemed to be a better candidate than a Republican at that time. But for you just to stay with the Democratic Party, like it's a gang, like it's a blood gang, and that you guys are tied to it, that is preposterous. All right. So I'm not gonna stay on here too long. I've been on here too long. I'm gonna get up off here, y'all. I appreciate y'all. I finally got the video going. But y'all check out all the rest of the videos. Y'all look at the other video I did on the agenda, the Civil War, right? Look at the Civil War that is brewing between parties. Now, I'm gonna get off of here, but what is it? What's the VP pick from Trump? Vance. Um, he was in my state, Ohio, the other day, a day or two ago, and he made mention that if they lose, it could be a civil war. People are not taking civil war serious. The Civil War was started based on the same principles. So you guys are not really looking at this in the totality that these ideologies, these two, and I keep saying this, I can't get it through y'all. These two right and left parties with their opposing agendas and projects are going to clash. They're going to clash. If Kamala gets in office, he says it's going to be a civil war. Why? Because the Agenda 2030 would be in full swing if she gets in office. Right? If if Trump get in office, they're going to push the Project 2025. Y'all go look at my video on that. Like I said, it's not that I'm for Trump or against Trump. But what I'm saying is I'm not for my people. I'm not for melanated people to just fall blindly into a Democratic trap. Because at the end of the day, Malcolm X called them a fox because they're slick and sly. And they'll grin in your face and destroy you at the same time. They'll give you hope, but they're nowhere to be found when it's really time to deal with it. What has, like, police brutality amongst melanated people is not going to change until melanated people come up with a solution for themselves. Once melanated people really do that, then that's when you see a change. Black Lives Matter. Where's Black Lives Matter? Black Lives Matter seems to be a very liberal organization that was eventually the liberals sided with them. But what happened to it? Where's Black Lives Matter? They seem to have gotten their money and ran off. So people, let us focus on our economics. Let us focus on economic power. Because if melanated people took their money and put it on a candidate, versus a vote. Because we've been voting for a long time and we haven't seen the results that's needed. We haven't seen police brutality really change. But if we put our money together and we buy a politician, the same way that they buy politicians, the same way that they put their money into their political position. Instead of blacks, so-called blacks, and Moors, like if the Moors, right? Because we are Moors. If Moors was to put their money together and create a Moorish political party that was set up based on the Moorish perspective, and we put our money into that, I would see that much better. If we were to have a political party that would be able to question any president who got in office, to truly question them without having these strings attached as puppets, what would happen? Instead of having like, I mean, like, what's the black what's the black brothers that like what's his name? Like the Al Sharpton. You know, we got Al Sharpton out here that's promoting this nonsense. You know, we got those type of leaders. Nah, we gotta do better, y'all. So I'm gonna get out of here, man. It's late. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Let's get up out of here. I'm gonna catch you on the next video. Peace and love.